Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about somebody who's coming in. Taz, as we know, is going to be coming in, but there's rumor and innuendo that Kevin Nash is unhappy and he may be getting cut loose from WCW. Meltzer would say the WWF hierarchy had a meeting regarding making an offer to Nash if he were to cut loose from WCW. The mood was very strong not to bring him in, and that he's doing the company far more benefit as a cancer in the other locker room. So I'm curious, JR. First of all, there's a lot going on in WCW. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but the idea that Nash might be available and you guys don't want him, that sort of jumps off the page.
Not everybody didn't want him. And you know, I'll be fully transparent here. Kevin Nash has been a friend of mine since I met him at the Cheetah when he was a bouncer, Gentlemen's Club in Atlanta. So I've known Kevin for long before he got in the wrestling business. I think Jerry Briscoe may have introduced him to me, but you know, playing back, you know, a guy that's a good-looking guy that's got a athletic body that's 7 feet tall. You can't just not look.
Yeah.
If you believe that he has he had the look, the appearance of a star, and he had the desire to leave the bar business, the gentleman's club business, and get into wrestling. So, you know, we had always had an interest in Kevin in that regard, but some people just, Kevin's a very, very intelligent guy. And sometimes in certain circles, when you know the guy you're talking to he's smarter than you, it makes some people uncomfortable. And so if you're in a creative vein, in the creative world, and you fit something to a talent, thinking that because they're naive, they're insecure, they don't want to say no because they might get in trouble, it might make them look bad, perception. And Kevin was the kind of guy that would speak up. Oh, if we did that, it's going to do this, and why don't we could do this and get the same deal done, whatever. He had ideas, and some people were intimidated by that. So there were some on the creative side that had bad experiences with Kevin in the past, apparently. I had no issues with it. Here's the deal. Bottom line, at the end of the day, if Vince wants him there, guess what? JR's going to hire him. I ain't going to ask nobody. I ain't going to poll the creative guys. Hey, what are you, pimply faced little jerk-offs, going to think about me bringing Kevin Nash in? Oh, by the way, it doesn't matter what you think because Vince has already wants me to sign him. But Kevin was a keeper. He helped us a lot, in my opinion. He's a Hall of Fame guy, but he was outspoken. He still is outspoken. He's a great follow on Twitter, by the way, because he has a lot of multiple interests. So the people just were intimidated by his intellect, I think, in a lot of ways. And then it all became, his intellect became his attitude. And that's what the difference is. So you're challenged by a guy's intellect, you can say, well, he's got a bad attitude. Oh, why? It's because he's smarter than you? And that basically was it. So Kevin was a controversial figure at that time, and a lot of people had bad memories. But, you know, anytime you get a guy with name, identity, box office, 7 feet, athletic, you don't just turn your backside. We don't want to do that. He might be a little higher maintenance than we're used to working with.
Let's talk about the other thing that's happening in WCW. It is a mass exodus. Meltzer would report WCW sent unconditional release letters to Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Conan, Shane Douglas, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn on January 19th. And I guess here, technically the release would allow them to start with Titan on February 1st, provided they agree to not say anything publicly disparaging about WCW and agree not to sue WCW. And after both sides sign the releases and they're executed on the 25th, it's believed that Benoit and Malenko and Guerrero and Saturn are all free to start with Titan as soon as this coming week. Allegedly, Conan and Shane Douglas maybe had a change of heart, didn't sign the release, et cetera, et cetera. I think Shane called Steve Austin to get word to Vince McMahon if he was interested. And, we know that didn't actually happen. Talk to me a little bit about when you hear there's a mass exodus and how all that comes together for these guys to show up on WWF TV.
Well, the word gets out because, you know, the old expression, telephone, telegraph, tell a wrestler. So nothing that went on down there, and I'm sure the same thing with our place, reciprocally, was a secret. And those guys were tired of being looked upon as none of you guys are 6 feet tall. You're undersized, and guys your height, your size will not draw money because nobody will believe that you're really good or you're really tough or whatever. So, man, when I heard those 4 guys could be available, I got very interested in that situation, and so therefore we brought them to Vince's house. We brought them to Greenwich. We brought them they stayed in Stanford. But look, I was a major fan of all those guys for different reasons. Saturn was the irreverent one, and the most unique cat probably of the group. Dean Malenko could wrestle and have a great match with anybody alive. He's a great coach now for AEW, and he had all that was just the knowledge, the whole thing. And he's 5'8" or 5'9", whatever the hell he is. And then you had Eddie and Chris, and that's where the rubber met the road, because in those 2 guys, in my opinion, as a EVP of Talent Relations, those were 2 men that were as good as any 2 in-ring performers in the world. That covers a lot of territory. That's a big territory.
Yeah.
And they both were different, but they both were extraordinary in-ring performers. And again, no matter if you had a young roster or veterans, the match with Benoit and or Jericho, speaking of those 2 specifically, were going to be great. And I couldn't believe, I really couldn't believe that WCW is allowing that to happen without any compensation, without, we didn't trade anybody. We didn't give them any money. We didn't do anything. We sat back and all the papers were signed. They got released, and hell, we were ready. I'd have signed them in 2 minutes later if you could have physically done it. But man, it was a big gift for us. The Radicals sitting at ringside. I still remember that, sitting at ringside, and there they are, and man, and look at how great Eddie became, and Chris. Unfortunately, Chris's legacy, as I mentioned, is going to always be tainted because of the last 48 hours or so of his life and the murder, suicide, and all the sad, horrific things. But if you have the ability just to table that for a second, just for a second, and go back and look at his in-ring work, how great was Chris Benoit? Pretty damned amazing. And then there was Eddie Guerrero, who, I compare Sammy Guevara to young Eddie Guerrero all the time on TV on Wednesday nights, because he has the same cocky, confident attitude, and also Latino that Eddie had. So I just thought the world of all those guys, Conrad, and they were big gifts for us. They really truly were.